Let me just say at the outset, for me, when I became a Christian, I didn't get saved to be a wimp. I don't know why I've put this in the beginning of my sermon, but I don't know why we say to men in the church, you can't be men. And I'm a man's man. I like being around men. Some of the ladies do too, apparently. I like being around men. I like manhood. God saved a man. And so when I got saved, I realized the words of Jesus were true. And that's not clicking over for me there. So we need to plan that somehow. I recognize the words of Jesus were true in Matthew chapter 7, verse 14. But small is the gate and narrow the road that leads to life. As we consider just briefly as a launchpad and introduction, the narrow road is never too narrow for Jesus to walk alongside us. It's never too narrow. Whatever we're facing, it's never too narrow for him to walk alongside us. But sometimes we will live our Christian lives, friends, as though it's a tightrope. We'll live our lives as though if we put one step wrong, we're going to fall off and then we're embarrassed by our mistakes. And some of us will look at our Christian life as though it's a tapestry, but a tapestry from reverse. If you look at tapestry on the reverse of a tapestry, it doesn't look like much, does it? It's a mess of threads and loose ends, and nothing seems to quite make sense. I don't know if that's how your life is sometimes. It's certainly how mine is, that sometimes it doesn't make sense. But when we turn it over, we see an artwork. See, the truth is our lives are both a tightrope, that when we're walking along the Christian narrow road, we discover that sometimes we do make mistakes, we put our feet wrong, and we fall off. But never forget that grace is the safety net through which we can never fall through. Never forget that his grace, there is nothing that we have ever done that his grace cannot deal with. There's no sin that's ever been committed that Jesus' blood has not dealt with. And let us not flatter ourselves by turning around and saying, God can never forgive me for this, because we then deny the power of the blood of Jesus Christ. And when we go through those times when we feel there are loose ends and we're doing everything right and everything seems to be going wrong and there's just that mess, if we turn over and think the artwork of the tapestry and see it from God's perspective, we discover that there's a work of art being created. That others are looking at our lives and seeing a work of art, and yet when we look at the back of our tapestry, we see a mess. I don't know what you see when you look in the mirror in the morning. Hopefully it's a reflection of yourself. But what I mean is, I see someone else that no one else sees. I see the man that was a boy that got saved. I see the changes that God has brought in my life, but I also see the imperfections. All right, there aren't many, but I do see them. And we all have those times, but when I became a Christian, I knew that it was going to be a narrow walk. I knew that it was going to be demanding. I was not sold a gospel that was a sad sop and a social message. I was sold a gospel that told me that if I gave my life to Jesus, life would have purpose. It would have meaning. That God would make me the man that he was wanting me to be and I could grow into. When I became a Christian, I did not become someone, and excuse the analogy, that has a wet fish handshake. If I can explain that to you, and if I offend you this morning, that's all right. It's my first Sunday. If I don't offend you this morning, there's plenty of other Sundays where I can. Bear with me, it'll happen. Do you ever get those handshakes and somebody extends their arm to you and you're not quite sure what is on the end of their wrist? It's just there flopping. And you're not sure whether you should shake it, chop it off, or deep fat fry it. It's a wet fish. And I don't know why I'm saying this at the very first sermon, the very first day, but I tell you this, men, we need to arise. So one thing the women are crying out for in the church of God is Christian men. And let us not apologize for testosterone. No, the men are nodding. One or two of them are looking at their wives wondering, shall I nod? Do I have permission to nod, dear? Yes, but not too much. Let us not apologize for being men of God. Let us take our place.